Welcome to the Farming Show podcast with Dylan Honcoop, where we bring you engaging conversations with expert guests on the latest information and insights into farming in the Pacific Northwest. Each week, we tackle the top issues on the minds of farmers across Washington State and beyond. So, whether you're a farmer, a food lover, or just curious about where your food comes from, the issues we discuss impact you. And now, here's your host, Dylan Honcoop.
It is corn season in the Pacific Northwest. I'd say in Whatcom and Skagit County, but man, they're chopping corn all over the place. Of course, most of that good sweet corn eating it's wrapping up unless some folks planted some really late sweet corn. So we humans have kind of had our shot at it, but now is the time to be chopping this field corn. And I say chopping because that's how it's harvested, for it to become food for the cows that make milk, and some that become beef. And this is a big harvest underway right now, just kind of getting started here in the Pacific Northwest, probably all over the parts of the country as well. I want to hear what's going on out there, what some of the new things are, and just in general, what's happening, particularly with farm equipment. Been a conversation I've been wanting to have for a while here on the program. Dylan Honcoop with you here. Glad you're here this morning with us on the Farming Show. With us right now, the man, the myth, the legend, owner of Skolton's Equipment, Mr. Dwayne Skolton himself. Dwayne, I finally got you on the show. You know, I've been wanting to have you here on the program for a long time, but we finally made it happen. And just before we jumped on here, you said you've been doing this whole equipment thing for 45 years now?
Yep, that's correct, Dylan. Yep.
So how's corn season going? I mean, you obviously a lot of outfits sell choppers, but you're one of the go-to spots for people, especially with your line of Claas forage harvesters, I guess technically. I call them choppers. And corn season, I know things get really busy around there. Of course, my cousin Lance works behind the parts counter, so I hear from him, you know, people are getting things ready. They're getting things in shape, and it's busy out there. I see the trucks rolling on the road, even around my place, as they're starting to harvest the field corn. What are you hearing? I know you even go out there and snoop around at some of those fields yourself as that equipment is in action.
Yeah, they're actually, there's some guys that are started that I'd say they just started the last couple of days of this week, but I just talked to another guy that walked in the store here in Burlington. He said it's probably the end of the month before most of them are going to start rolling, or next week, latter part of next week. So it's a little bit early yet. You know, guys they want to get going, and so you see a little bit of that going. I hear the guys that are going claims that the maturity of the corn is really good. Tonnage may not be quite as good because they've had taller corn before, but that's actually better when the maturity of the corn is good, and they're pretty happy about that. So it's looks like it's going to be a pretty decent year.
Well, you know, in terms of tonnage, that isn't necessarily the entire story. I know we've had, you know, a nutritionist. We had Johnny Vanderveen here on the program in the past talking about, you know, not just tonnage, but, you know, percentage dry matter, and then also just the overall nutrition. You know, how much ear, you know, how much of the good stuff, the good yellow ear is in there as well. People have a sense of that yet, or is that really yet to be seen once it's chopped, once it's put up and ensiled, and then added to the TMR, the total mixed ration that guys put together for their herds?
Yeah, most of the guys are pretty careful not to get too anxious harvesting corn, because it's a very expensive crop to raise, and obviously if they chop it early, they're going to lose a lot of starch, and so they've been pretty. I've been pretty impressed. Guys don't want them kernels squirting back at you if they crack a ear open. So. Right. As long as they're doing that, making sure it's not squirting back at you, it turns out to be pretty good feed.
And, the equipment is an important part of that too. And there's some new kind of technology, new techniques, practices that people are going after. We need to talk about earlage here in a minute, Dwayne, because before we came on the air, you were filling me in a little bit on that too, how people are getting into that. And what does that mean? How does that work? But I'd say let's take a step further back than that too. For people who aren't familiar with any of this, and what are we talking about here? We're harvesting field corn for animal feed, cows, again, mostly dairy, some beef. That's primarily where most of this corn around here that you see goes, and you guys sell and service and support the equipment that gets that done. What is that process? I mean, that used to be kind of a different machine that people would see, back in the old days, a pull-type corn forage harvester chopper behind a tractor, individual rows. Eventually, it was the self-propelled choppers and then the rotary heads. And it basically pulls the whole stock, the whole thing into the chopper. Explain what happens from there as these big burly machines make their way through the field.
Yeah, there's been a lot of change, even in the 40 some years I've been doing it. I planted corn, started planting corn with a 6-row planter, and now we got heads that are 10-row, 12-row. They're harvesting more than the planter plants. But probably the single biggest change is back in the 80s, they had to chop the corn early because if they waited too long, the kernels just passed through the cows without getting any nutritional value out of them if they waited too long for it to be mature. But they soon learned that letting the corn get mature, they had better starch, better energy level, better carbohydrates, and so now suddenly the challenge became how do we process these kernels? So that was probably the single biggest thing that happened in forage harvesters. And you're right, everybody calls them choppers. But you got to be careful. You start talking about choppers, and you soon lose a city slicker because they think you're talking about a motorcycle. So,
motorcycle with an extra long front fork, specifically. Yeah. But we aren't talking about Orange County choppers here. We're talking about Whatcom County choppers here. Again, Dwayne Skolton with us right now with Skolton's Equipment here on the Farming Show. But yeah, the head pulls those stalks in, slices them off. I mean, some people see, there's still a little bit of stalk sticking up out of the ground. They actually don't want to take the very bottom part, right?
Right. There's almost no nutritional value in the bottom part, and it's kind of it might be obviously today to get these milk cows to milk 80 to 100 pounds of milk, you don't want them eating anything that's not gonna encourage that. So but. And then now to get them kernels processed, we're running through a kernel processor, and that thing spins at 4,000 revolutions, which most people have no idea it spins that fast. Even some farmers are surprised. Do they really spin that fast? Well, that's the only way they can get that stuff through there. So, and they spin at different speeds, and which a lot of people don't see on the outside. But that's very critical to getting a good job of processing the kernels. So. It's a fairly high, sophisticated piece of equipment, and it's a piece of equipment. It's a part of the chopper that requires some fairly normal maintenance because if them bearings are spinning that fast, they sometimes go out, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. So
okay, so the whole stock. All the leaves, the ears, the stalk, everything gets sucked into this chopper, which. Now, again, I haven't really taken a good close look at one of these all taken apart in the exact sequence, but it's called a chopper because it's chopping all of that plant material into short pieces, which are a couple inches long?
Yeah, they're like not even an inch.
Not even an inch.
Like under an inch. Yeah.
So short pieces. And then it's after that all that material has to go through a processor that basically cracks the kernels open so the nutrition can come out and the cow can eat it?
That's correct. Yep. Cracks the kernel through, so splits the kernel in two. You want to see the kernel split basically in two. Okay. You want them annihilated. It's kind of, it didn't start out that way, but that's where it's at today. And they call that processing score. and every chopper is kind of rated on its processing score. So you'll see guys taking samples and seeing how good a job they're doing at processing. And it's a big deal to dairy farmers because it's directly related to the milk in the tank. So
well, more milk, and to do that, you want as happy and as healthy and as well fed, nutritionally balanced diet, happy cows as you can do, and it comes down to a bunch of bearings and steel spinning at high rates of speed to make that happen, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
It's amazing the amount of corn that these choppers can cut, chop, process, and blow into a truck or a wagon in a short amount of time too. I mean, I don't know if there are numbers that you can throw out there to help people understand just how much material these things are able to process, in a given minute or a given hour.
Yeah, compared to the old days with a pull type chopper, you'd be lucky to do 20, 30 ton, maybe 40 ton an hour. Now, they're not happy unless they're doing 200 plus ton an hour.
Wow.
And we just went to big launch classes. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt on the internet and Facebook. Claas launched their new 1000 series chopper in California about a month ago, 30 days ago, and it was all top secret. And that thing has almost 1,200 horsepower in it. And out in the field, they had it up to 500 ton an hour, which is just incredible.
Grief.
Yeah. 14 row head, 500 ton an hour. Granted, that was 35 ton corn, but per acre. But it's amazing what they can get these things to chew through. And so,
well, this relates to some even the political stuff we talk about on the show a lot too. Farmers have to find that kind of efficiency, because some people can say, well, why do you got to be that big? Why do you got to, bigger, faster? Because probably still the most important, most costly thing on a farm is labor, followed by fuel and all these sorts of things. It's worth it to invest in this equipment and this new technology to be able to survive in some cases. You've got to be able to harvest this stuff as quickly as possible, also because of weather windows and other reasons, when it is correctly ripe, but also when you aren't going to get stuck in the rain, the mud that inevitably crops up, especially later in corn harvest season. And so this is why these things are important for farms to be able to do as much as they can, as quickly as they can, with as few people as possible. One guy sitting in a chopper can cover a lot of ground in a big hurry in this day and age.
Yeah. No, it's impressive what they've done. It's basically what I call the feed window. Today, you go back 30 years ago, and if it took us 5 weeks to put up corn silage, that was kind of normal. I mean, the guys just, and today they realize if they can't get that corn silage put up in 10 days, they suffer quality either by starting too early or going too late when it gets too dry, and then their quality of feed goes down. So that's a lot of dollars per ton getting it harvested at the right time. And so that's become a huge deal. So it's kind of, to me, it looks kind of silly. I'm old school and kind of enjoyed harvest. And so what, it took a month and a half. Well, now they don't want to take a month and a half. It's because the feed quality deteriorates if it takes too long to get it off. So, and every crop is seeing that. It isn't just corn silage.
Yep.
Probably every crop you get into, if it takes you too long to harvest it, it can be, the value just deteriorates quickly. So, and that's a pretty big deal today.
Well, go ahead.
The varieties they have today, it's just amazing how some of these corn hybrids perform, even in drought situations. I mean, we haven't had a lot of rain the last 2-3 years, and we're still getting decent corn crops, which is just, it's total credit to the hybrids. And they're seeing that in every crop. And so that's even amazing what's changed on it. I mean, that's in the last 10 years. I've seen dramatic change in tonnages and yields. That's all the way across the U.S. So it's all good stuff.
It is pretty incredible, all these things that you're talking about. And as you're juxtaposing them with how things were even just 20, 30 years ago, when I was a kid watching corn being harvested around here. I still remember my neighbor, Dick Neidham, with his John Deere 4240 and a pull-type chopper. I don't know if he was doing maybe 3 rows at a time, 2 rows at a time,
yep,
and it was just a totally different ball game than what it has become. But a lot of this isn't just to be bigger and cooler and whatever flashier. It's to survive in the current climate of incredibly thin margins, tons of cost pressures, global markets that are tight, labor that is expensive, regulations that are tight. All of these things create the need for this. Again, talking with Dwayne Skolton, owner of Skolton's Equipment. You guys have been doing this for 45 years. How long have you been selling these green Claas choppers? And that comes out of, is it Germany primarily, right?
Yeah, and everybody's chopper today is not built on U.S. soil, unfortunately. John Deere's built in Germany, France, and Claas is Germany, and New Holland is England. And so, they're all. We became a Claas dealer in 2004. Prior to that, I bought and sold used ones, used John Deere's. That was kind of always my background when we started. Yeah, we started buying and selling. We hauled a lot of used John Deere's out here because that was the only brand I was familiar with, and then we got kind of bought and sold a couple Claas choppers, and just realized, hey, this is a pretty decent machine. Yeah. And so it took me 4 or 5 years to get the franchise. They wouldn't let me have it. I begged and begged and begged, and finally in 2004 I got the franchise, and then we got to trade all the John Deere's back in. So. And sold them all Claases. So we're pretty proud of our Claas population. Not everybody runs them, but they by far are the leader of the pack. The interesting thing we learned in California that Claas builds a 990. Before the launch, their big chopper was 925 horse. Mm-hmm. And we were wondering, why did they introduce them? Why did they launch it in the U.S.? They never launched their new models.
That's not home ground. It's Europe for them.
Yeah, the Germans are pretty proud people. Yeah, and their launches were always in Europe. But then they explained to us, well, we're introducing this big dog and this 1,200 horsepower monster, because the U.S. took 80% of all the big choppers they built. When they built the 990s, 80% of their market was in the U.S. I was stunned by that. I had no idea. So the U.S. is a big market for them. So
that's interesting to hear. So let's talk, before we run ourselves out of time. I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about, not just corn harvest, but so many other things that you guys do there at Skolton's Equipment. But let's talk about this whole earlage development. What does that even mean? Again, I guess I didn't explain for those who are new to this whole scene. We're talking about harvesting corn for cows. It's chopped up, and as we talked about, the kernels are processed, everything, then put into typically bunkers, not really upright silos for the most part anymore. The air is squished out of them. It's packed down and sealed off. It ensiles and basically makes what I call cow sauerkraut. It's a high energy, high nutrition feed that then lasts out throughout the year, can be mixed with other nutrients and minerals and things to create excellent food for cows. But this earlage thing, what is that all about? That's not silage. It's what does it mean to make earlage?
Well, earlage, what they're doing is they're putting a combine head that just harvests the grain. They're taking a head off of a combine, and we're mounting it on a forage harvester and going through the field and just snapping the ears off of the stalk. And then we're running that through the chopper, and the kernel processor becomes even more important. Then sometimes we put in a finer roll yet, and we literally obliterate the corn, and it becomes earlage. And it's become very popular. When corn's a little cheap, like now, it's a little harder to justify. But when corn crawls back up to $5, they'll be going after it again. But so then they're getting all starch, carbohydrates. It's like almost like having grain. but you're raising the grain yourself. And then the cool part about earlage is very attractive to guys who struggle to find cheap land. So if they can't get any land to grow corn silage, they can usually find in our area, and even in everywhere you go, some guys don't have enough land close by, but they can rent land 5-6 miles down the road, maybe 10, and then they put grain corn on it and harvest earlage, and that way they don't have near the freight costs of hauling it back. And
they're getting just the very best of the best, high quality nutrition. The ear of the corn, that's where the milk is. Fortunately, we're out of time. With Dwayne Skolton, owner of Skolton's Equipment, great to have you with us on the program. We need to have you back one of these days soon because, there's so many things that we just haven't even gotten the chance to dig into yet this morning, but interesting to hear what's going on. You're going to be seeing those silage trucks hauling the product of these choppers that we've been talking about back to the bunker silos at the farms around here in this area and different spots all over the state where folks do this. So please give them wide berth. Let them get their job done. They're just getting a job done, trying to keep cows happy, healthy, well-fed. Thanks, Dwayne, to you and the whole team there at Skolton's Equipment up here in Linden, where I am this morning, as well as down there in Burlington, where you're at, keeping people supplied with the equipment they need to get the job done when the pressure's on, and that's right now. And thanks for taking the time in the middle of all of it to chat with us here on the show this morning.
Well, you're very welcome, Dylan. Appreciate the farm show. You do a good job. Keep it up.
Thanks for joining us for the Farming Show podcast, where each week we tackle the top issues on the minds of farmers across Washington state and beyond. The Farming Show is a production of Save Family Farming, speaking out to protect Washington's family farming community through advocacy, outreach, and education. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the Farming Show podcast on your favorite audio platform. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think. Follow Save Family Farming on Facebook and Instagram, and check us out online at savefamilyfarming.org.